Hey everybody, my name's Brian. I am the designer and developer of Erenshor, and I just wanted to take this time to make sort of a year-end recap for those who are following the project. Talk a little bit about where we are, where we've been, and where we're going. So I think it's really important to start out with what is Erenshor. Erenshor is what we lovingly refer to as a single-player MMORPG, and yes, I realize that is sort of a statement that doesn't make any sense. But what Erenshor is it's an RPG that really captures that feel of the late 90s and early 2000s MMOs, but it's populated by a large group of simulated players. So you can log in and out at will, you don't have to schedule your playtime. You can quit in the middle of a group and nobody's going to hold it against you, but you still get that MMO grind and progression and raids and that full experience, but it's all on your own terms and your own schedule. Erenshor has been in development now for over a year, but we went live with a demo on Steam back in September, and it was a really early build. The animations weren't great, the quality of life features weren't really great, the UI needed a ton of work, and we thought that there was going to be somewhere between 2 and 3 hours of gameplay. As it turns out, people have put upwards of 20 hours into that demo, whether they're trying to get full best in class, or they're trying to complete all of the more obscure quests that are available, and that has been such an encouraging sign that Erenshor is something special, and there's a really big group of people out there who have wanted a game like this. And with that demo, our community has begun to really grow. Our Discord has somewhere around 600 members at this point. We have a Patreon where the early adopters actually got keys to the full build of Erenshor, so they have access to the full in-development version of the game. And these folks, because they were early adopters, are passionate about the project, and they have been providing consistent feedback on every single little bit of new content that gets developed. And their input is really shaping Erenshor into what I think is a great game. And because of them, the product upon release is going to be so thoroughly tested and balanced and everything else that that's a week I'm so excited to watch people experience the game and all of the hard work that has gone into it. So let's talk a little bit about some of the ideas behind Erenshor, and specifically the simulated players. It has been a little bit unfortunate that Erenshor started to gain popularity right after generative AI hit the market, because people have had a little bit of a misconception on what the simulated players are. Generative AI is not really very compatible with video games just yet. Steam is taking a really defensive stance against it, and the AI itself requires either accessing the company's API, which costs money, or local hosting it on the user's computer, which increases hardware requirements pretty substantially. Both of those things would really change how we have to approach development of the game. If we accessed the company's APIs for a fee, that's ultimately a fee that would have to be passed on to the users. And as much as I'm trying to emulate an MMORPG, I don't think people would be very happy with a monthly subscription model in order to support the AI costs. At the same time, local hosting it on the user's computer would really exclude a lot of people on lower end systems. Even the computer I'm developing Erenshor on probably would not be able to run a large language model and the game at the same time without major performance issues. So unless AI changes or becomes more accessible, it's just not in the cards for the simulated players, but it will always remain a stretch goal. So the simulated players still aren't going to just be like the mercs that you've seen in other games. They all have dialogue that's specifically written for them and their personalities. You may have the friendly player who's always looking to help. You may have the player who's constantly watching YouTube on the other monitor and will wipe your raid over and over again. And you'll get to know the simulated players and who you like and who you don't like. And at the same time, they're going to have access to game knowledge that the player doesn't. So when you're doing a raid that requires mechanics, or you're looking for that obscure quest item, the simulated player will be able to access a database, and depending on that simulated player's given skill level, they'll use that knowledge to some level of effectiveness. Some of them may not be very good at complex raid encounters. Some of them may be really, really good at them. Some may be great to group with, and others maybe will be AFK behind you while you're polling a group of enemies. And you're going to have friends, and you're going to have other ones that you don't so much like to group with. Just like a real MMORPG. They're not all just cookie-cutter versions of the same thing. So the release goals for Erenshor are, right now the goal is to have it out in a completed state by the end of 2024. And as that date approaches, we will look at the content we have and decide, is it time for a full release, or is an early access release a little bit more realistic? Or potentially we may end up having to delay if the game's not in a state where we feel like the user is going to get that full and complete MMORPG experience. So it's hard to put a finger on a release date right now, but that is the goal. Post-release, the goal is to continue to support the game and continue to keep that MMORPG feel by adding content through patches, whether it's new items or balance or quests or world raid bosses. The world will change through patches after release. Now, there is also the possibility of large-scale expansion packs, whether that's releasing an entire new continent, changing or increasing the level cap with new raid content. Those would come with another one-time fee, just like any other DLC for any other game. What Erenshor will not have is any microtransactions or cash shops. The vanity armor, the pay-to-win XP bonuses, those will not exist in Erenshor. Your character is going to be your character because you've worked hard on it. In our Discord, we did invite the users there to post questions that they would like to have covered in this video. And before we get into those, I just want to call out the Discord one more time. There are links to it on our Steam page. There's a link in the description of this video. There's even links in the demo of Erenshor. Join the Discord if you're interested in following the project. Getting into the user questions, the first one is how big is the world going to be? And to answer that, I first have to explain how the world is laid out. So Erenshor, the world, is broken up into sections called zones. A zone may be a field or a forest or a city or a dungeon. And by doing that, it allows me to focus on game performance. It allows me to give each area of the game an individual feel without having too many textures or models present. And it also just helps the player realize where they are and what level range the area is without having to guess too much. Right now, there's about 35 zones planned for the game. That number may fluctuate up or down if an area is too big and needs to be divided up, or if there is a need for a dungeon due to a story point that I want to further develop. But if you want to get an idea of what a zone is and how large it is, check out the demo on Steam. Stowaway Step is the name of the zone that you get there, and that'll give you an idea of how the game is going to be structured and laid out and what sort of content density you can expect. The next question is, will there be any advanced or world-changing mechanics planned for the game? And yes, as the player progresses through quests, as he kills raid bosses, he may see small changes in the world. Now, there won't be huge drastic changes like destroyed cities or anything like that. Erenshor is a relatively static world, and the player's character is not a hero. He's just a person living in the world, so his ability to make changes will be minimal. But you will see NPCs say different things to you, you'll see different raid bosses spawn depending on where you are in a quest and things like that. One of the more common questions is, will there be post-max level grinds or horizontal progression? And absolutely yes. I think one of the worst feelings in an MMORPG is running out of things to do. So the grind to get to max level will be a grind, But once you're there, there will be even longer journeys to take in order to increase your character power. I plan a few different ancient currencies that you can farm and find. There may be rare items to craft, or there may be very obscure quests to discover through reading lore and things like that, but there will always be something to do. Somebody asked if there will be Steam achievements. Absolutely yes. Trade skills and professions have been a really common topic of discussion, and Erenshor was originally designed without those in mind. Based on feedback from the demo, I have implemented a smithing and a mining trade skill, as well as a little fishing skill too. Those will be expanded on throughout development, where players can craft armor or items to sort of fill in blanks, and then we will need another skill that's more caster friendly. You know, smithing works for the melee classes, but the wizards and the druids, they'll need something for them, whether it's tinkering or a magical workbench. It's not designed yet, but it will be there before release. And then cooking or alchemy or some other way to utilize ingredients and food to get further buffs will also be implemented before release. I have teased an epic quest for the Paladin throughout development, and the question is, will every single class have an epic weapon quest? Yes, they will. There will be lengthy quests that require raids and dungeons and rare drops for every single class. You will also have to explore the world lore a little bit to know what your next steps are going to be. So it'll be sort of like unraveling a mystery as you play that's relevant to the character you're playing. And it will result in what will be the best in slot item for your character. In the game right now, there's an item called a Civicrux, which is a rare form of currency that has a very small chance of dropping off of any monster in the game. And the question was, will there be more things of that nature? And there will. There's one mechanic I'm exploring now where there's a giant, it looks like a chessboard in the middle of a desert. And as you're exploring the desert, you find game pieces. And if you approach the chessboard with a game piece, that game piece jumps out of your inventory and comes to life on the chessboard, and you have to fight it. So throughout the game, you will find more and more rare game pieces for the chessboard, and if you go to the board, they will again jump from your inventory and you'll fight them like a boss, and they will have loot drops exclusive to them. So that's another way I plan on rewarding players for grinding and exploration. And probably the most common question is, will there be multiplayer? There will not be multiplayer in Erenshor on release. If it gets modded in by the community at a later time, I am totally fine with that. But for me, my vision is a single player experience that's designed and tuned to be a single player experience. When you start implementing multiplayer, you start balancing for multiplayer, and the players who want to play solo tend to feel a little bit cheated at that point. And for that reason, as advertised, Erenshor is a single player MMORPG. Another user asked if there will be a hardcore mode for characters, and yes, that is planned as well. If your character dies and is a hardcore character, he will be dead for good, and you will have to restart that save slot from scratch. Whether or not there are going to be rewards for playing hardcore mode, like a small experience bonus, is undecided, but likely. The demo itself drops the player on a small island called Stowaway Step, which sits just off of the mainland of Erenshor. The player finds out that the ports are closed, there's some violent activity going on by different factions on the mainland, and so now the player has to find a way off the island that is maybe less than legal, but there are a few different quests on the island to complete. There is a world boss, there's some crafting. The island serves as a tutorial, and it takes the player through all of the main game mechanics, introduces them one by one, and then for the completionist, it offers some item grinds and some rare item camps and people have really taken to that. And so once you complete the demo, your character will still be usable when the main game releases. It won't be wasted time, and when the game comes out, you'll just get to skip the tutorial because you've already done it and jump right into the content. One other exciting piece of news to share is that Richard, who handles the community management and the marketing for Erenshor, is going to be setting up a booth at Louisiana RetroCon on March 2nd and 3rd. He owns a company called Zmore Design. Erenshor is one of the games that he will be representing there, and if you're in the area, make sure you head over and meet him, check out Erenshor in person, and all the other games that are going to be on display there. If you haven't yet, please consider wishlisting Erenshor on Steam. Steam puts a ton of weight on that number when they're considering what games to feature at launch, and that is absolutely the most helpful thing you can do for us at this time. Also, join our Discord. We have an awesome community built up. People are talking about Erenshor, they're sharing secrets, they're sharing quests, they're sharing items that they found. It's a ton of fun. I'm in there every single day too. I'm happy to answer questions about the game, and I'm happy to give some insight into the development. I share screenshots and videos all the time. So I hope to see you in the Discord, and always feel free to reach out to me.